Hey, it's Coach Taylor from SmarterTeamTraining.com. I got to tell you right now that I'm pretty pumped, man. We're starting a summer program around here. Things are flying. We're going about 100 miles an hour, and I hope everybody that's listening to this show is too. We all get pumped for different times of the year, and this is one time of the year that I really enjoy just getting after it. The kids that come in from colleges, the pro guys in town, the clients are getting ready to go to their beach weekends, et cetera, man. I just really enjoy this time of year. But I am making time to reach out to people still. I want to continue doing the show. I want to be able to reach out and find out what has worked for others. I want to find out what others know now that they wish they knew way back when. So one thing that the staff's been asking about is different types of self-myofascial release and the foam rolling concept. And we've been having questions about flexibility and mobility and those types of things. And I through a networking type scenario, which I hope everybody is trying to expand their own network, a gentleman named Jeff Alexander and I connected, and we got a couple different things going on. If you go to the website and check it out, I don't know when you're listening to the show, so I never really tried to do current events, but Jeff's been a really cool resource for me, and it's been nice to just talk shop and have a very unbiased, just, hey, what has worked for you, and he just unloads and gives it back to me, and I just said, hey, Jeff, would you mind getting on the show with me here, just to talk about a few questions that we had that I'd love to share with everybody on the show. So, Jeff, man, I appreciate you taking in some time out of your day. I know you're a busy dude, too. I know right before we started the show here, we were just sharing a little bit about what we have both going on. And to find an hour in a week is awesome to share with you, my man.
Yeah, Rob, it's a pleasure to be here, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, for the listeners or the people who have met me, I'm a passionate guy, and we talked a little bit about that before we got started here. So my number one question that I ask just about everybody that comes on the show here is, where's your passion come from? What gets you fired up in the morning? And tell me a little bit about what you have going on now, my man.
My passion is teaching self-myofascial release to coaches and to athletes so that they can do a better job of taking care of themselves. What I really think is what separates me from other mobility experts out there who are trying to get people to move better is that I'm not trying to be a therapist in a box. I'm not trying to diagnose anything from a distance. So whenever someone asks me via email or through the website, what can I do about my knee issue or my hip issue, my first go-to is, hey, have you seen a doc or a physical therapist or somebody about this? Because they're the hands-on technician or the therapist that's going to know what to do with that situation. But there's a lot that we can do to take care of ourselves, much like you would do with brushing your teeth or taking a bath or a shower to take care of yourself. You don't need a doctorate to do those kind of things, but you do need to pay attention. And there are some particulars about maybe muscles or joints or whatever that some athletes might not be aware of, and that's where I think you and me and the other coaches and trainers out there, we can be that bridge between actually being injured and just having some tightness or restriction somewhere and maybe doing something about that. I personally have a passion about this because about 13 years ago, I ran a half marathon, and shortly before that half marathon, I was doing a trail run and slipped and fell down a bit of the hill that I was running on and kind of bruised my muscles around my left knee. And during the half marathon, I had to walk the last 4 miles of the half marathon because running, the impact of my foot to the ground in a jogging or running posture actually was very painful, like a stabbing pain on the outside of my left knee. Now, when I saw some therapists afterwards, in the following days after the half marathon, there was no structural damage to my knee. There was no ligament damage, no meniscus damage, nothing like that. It was just soft tissue, muscle that was so tight that it was physically painful to take that jarring of a running motion. And that got me started with this idea of, like, if soft tissue can be that painful and that dysfunctional, then what can we do about it since I didn't need medical treatment? And so here we are 13 years later, and after about 5 years of self-experimentation and seeing what was out there in the early 2000s, and there really wasn't a whole lot of information. It was a structural program at that time. I started pulling together different facets that helped me and then also helped my clients. I've been a personal trainer for almost 20 years now. And that grew into what's now called the Alexander Method of SMR. It's a continuing education qualified course for trainers to take to teach their clients more about biomechanics and anatomy. And we've tried to keep the information as simple as we can without losing scientific validity. So that way your athletes, your clients don't need to take a course in anatomy just to follow what the heck we're talking about. But we talk about the knees, we talk about the hips, we talk about the shoulders and what muscles might attach there and how you might address those muscles so that you can improve movement. And the benefits to me, the benefits to my clients in terms of improved lifestyle, that's what really gets me going. That's what makes me feel so happy. I have an 85-year-old client that will be 86 next month, and this guy is in better shape, mobility-wise, strength-wise, and every way you can measure in the last 8 years that I've been working with him as a private client, and that just makes me feel absolutely fantastic that I could improve this guy's quality of life in his retirement years.
When we're talking to our clients or our athletes, and we're talking about the foam roller, or we have trigger point therapy rollers, we have rumble rollers, PVC pipe, we have different types of balls, we have tennis ball. I mean, there's so many different tools that we have at our disposal. I feel like it's something that people can do more often, and different tools are for different uses, that type of thing. But I try to explain to them from the concept of brushing your teeth is equivalent to going to the dentist as doing some type of self-myofascial release, whether it's foam rolling on the rollers or the balls, etc., as it is to going to a masseuse to get actually some type of soft tissue massage, which we are a big proponent of. I mean, we try to get guys in, and our late guys and girls for that matter, 2 times a month. We're trying to get them in there. If we can get them once a month, that's even that's great. I mean, finances and time and all these other things that go on there with that decision. And then as they start moving into that concept and they start moving better, it's crazy how they start adding that more so to their, as you imply, their lifestyle. I mean, what's the difference between the benefits of self-myofascial release and then from the concept of the soft tissue massage? I mean, can you walk me through a little bit of what the benefits are, or how can they be used in a program?
Absolutely, Rob. And there's a big confusion point for a lot of people where they think of rolling out or foam rolling or SMR as being a replacement for or just as good as myofascial therapy, where you have a hands-on therapist working on you. And I like to use the analogy like you just mentioned about going to the dentist or brushing your teeth. I like to say things like you're not going to fill your own cavity or do your own root canal, but you will brush and floss. And they are not the same. Now when you go to the dentist's office, they're going to brush your teeth too. They're going to do deep cleaning for you. But they're going to do stuff that you aren't either qualified or aren't even really capable of doing by yourself. And so I want people, with what we take, with the courses we teach, I want them to come away from our courses understanding that there's a line in the sand, if you will, of where self-care ends and proper therapeutic care begins. And there is a bit of overlap, but really there's self-care that you do in between visits to the therapist, and then there's the deep stuff that they do that you really shouldn't be trying to do by yourself. You're more likely to injure yourself than you are to do it properly. And so there are lots of tools, like you mentioned. There's the trigger point foam roller, which is EVA foam wrapped around a PVC pipe. There's the EVA foam by itself, which is a solid EVA foam that's been put out for like 20 years now. There's the white little cells are all that mash really easily. That within about 3 months of use, it's all deformed. There's so many different tools you can use: tennis balls, golf balls, lacrosse balls, whatever. What we tell people is let's make sure that you're keeping within a pain threshold of 6 to 8, no more than 8. So in other words, you can tolerate it, but it might not be comfortable. But you should not have to bite down on a knife to get through some of these techniques when you're doing them to yourself. If it's so uncomfortable that you're not even able to see straight, you're not going to be able to relax. And our focus should be on bringing about a relaxed state in the muscles, even more so than trying to release tension in the fascia. There's a lot of arguments amongst different doctors and therapists as to how much of a release is even possible with the fascia because it's so dense and it's so strong. And there are some professionals that argue in order to release any amount of tension in the fascia, you would literally have to damage it. And that is something that we want to respect, that we're not able to diagnose a fascial release in the gym or the athletic field setting. You're not dissecting tissue. You're not actually pulling it out of the body and looking at it under a microscope. So what we want to focus on is muscles and movements and how we can improve those movements. So if you've got a baseball player that has a stiff shoulder, what can we do on the playing field that's not going to injure them, that's not going to make a rotator cuff or other injury more likely, but that can make them more fluid with their movements? And in many cases, that means using a roller or a ball or something else combined with stretching techniques, combined with warm-up techniques. So we're going to respect reciprocal inhibition from dynamic mobility work. We're going to respect autogenic inhibition from static mobility work, where you do a static stretch. We want to respect the limits of what those concepts bring to the table and what they take away from the athlete. If you hold a position for far too long, they've demonstrated in studies that it actually hinders athletic performance. So in our courses, we try and teach the idea of myofascial release and self-myofascial release, and how you can do certain things to yourself, or you can, by your own practices, make your body stiffer or make your body less athletic because you did it wrong. And so we're trying to teach the approach rather than it's only this tool. We call our level 1, level 2 courses RumbleRoller Certifications because they found us 3 years ago, and they really like my approach and the Alexander Method of SMR, and they want us to use our approach to teach how people should use their products. So we linked up with them, but they are a separate company from my company, which is Network Fitness. We've been teaching self-taught fascia release to coaches and athletes for the better part of a decade now. And only the last year, in 2014, is when we were officially the certification for RumbleRoller. So we have a long history of teaching concepts using any tool you have access to and how you might use that better. On that note, I do want to say that when you take things like a kettlebell or a keg or some other type of a hard, heavy object, and you apply that to the body in order to try and get more pressure onto the muscles, there typically is a higher level of activation in the very muscles you're trying to release, and that can make the release you're looking for more difficult to achieve. So we try to encourage people to use less weight, less force, and focus on things like deep breathing and visualizing the muscle relaxing. And by doing that, you can actually get a much better address of the deeper tissues, and you also get less damage to the surface muscles. So there's no bruising or less bruising. That means a faster recovery time and really a better performance improvement for your athletes.
Before we go too deep here and into the other questions that I have for you, I want to go backwards per se and talk a little bit about anatomy. Can you explain what the fascia tissue does, maybe what the fascial layer is, and then a little bit about how tight fascia affects performance?
Okay, yeah. Now, there is a great article that I just looked up again. It's been out there on the web since 2012, and it was written by a former massage therapist out of Vancouver, Canada. And there's a lot of information online about fascia. There's a lot of information that you can look up in the anatomy textbooks about fascia. Essentially, it's a sleeve around the muscles, and there's arguments as to how contractile it is, how active it is. There is an agreement amongst most doctors that it's extremely dense and strong, and in many cases, doctors would argue that you cannot affect change on fascia unless it's an actual injury, such as a tear or a impact trauma or something like that. Now, with that in mind, with the debate still very live and very hotly contested in certain areas, many doctors saying, no, you can affect change through manual therapy with heat applied or with lots of firm pressure, and other doctors saying, no, we have taken the approach over the last 7+ years that instead of trying to prove or disprove the release that happens in the fascia, and also considering that the fascia is underneath the layers of skin and fatty tissue, so you can't see it with your own naked eye unless you take it out of the body. With that in mind, we've focused on muscles and movements so that if you see a catcher squatting poorly with very poor knee function, what can we do with the muscles around the knee and the hip that can improve the squatting function of that athlete? So we've tried to keep the focus on movements and muscles rather than fascia itself, although I would suggest there is some impact on the fascia. But I want to defer to the doctors who are researching this and have been at this for the better part of 20 years, and they still can't come to a conclusive agreement as to any change we can possibly impact. But if someone does a search online for fascia and changes it can do to it and whether or not we can force a release in the fascia, you're going to find a lot of articles out there. I would argue that you should be highly skeptical whenever someone's saying about this tremendous release you get in the fascia. I would strongly encourage people to think about the IT bands. IT band syndrome is something that's diagnosed very, very widely, especially for runners. I have seen dramatic improvements by not focusing on the IT band at all and instead focusing on the quadriceps, specifically the vastus lateralis and the vastus intermedius. Those are muscles that underlie the IT band region of the body, and it is extremely likely that the lateral quads are going to be tight in a person who has IT band syndrome. There are other muscles that might attach to the IT band, such as the tensor fasciolata, the gluteus maximus. So we talk about muscles as they attach to fascial areas or tendinous areas like the IT band, and we talk about those muscles that influence those areas because the muscles will typically respond a heck of a lot faster. And like I said, some doctors would argue the fascia will not respond to manual therapy. So instead of getting into this debate about fascia and how much change we can do on it, let's focus on what we know moves the body, and that's the muscles. And if the muscles are more supple or more relaxed, then we're on the right track. Now, but just because you're massaging an area let's say you're rolling out the quads. If those quads are unresponsive, we tend to get into discussion about nutrition, such as electrolyte balance, hydration balance, things of that nature, because it is not just a one single concept when it comes to myofascial release. You cannot think about the muscles as an island unto themselves, and if you just massage them, they're going to respond. Sometimes you need to look at the athlete's nutrition or their sleep schedule and the fact that they're training 6 hours a day and getting 4 hours of sleep a night or something like that. So we want to look at the whole picture, and in our courses we teach the concept of how do you approach an individual with regards to the restrictions they have. If they have a clicking or a popping across a joint, there might be a fascial burr of some sort. There might be a tendonitis, bursitis, some other issue. So we strongly encourage people to take a look at getting that proper diagnosis, but also take that ball or that roller, use it in the area of the body that's appropriate. Do you get a release where you can move better? And let's track the progress. Immediately after you're done with that technique of massage work on yourself, does it move better? Do you feel better? And if you do, then we're on the right track. If you do a massage of some sort, let's say, for example, you sprain your ankle, massaging an area that's acutely injured, that is definitely not a good idea. So we don't suggest self-myofascial release is always the right way to go. And if someone starts digging in really, really intensely trying to get that release in the fascia, again, they might do more damage than good for themselves. And so we want to encourage people to look at how do they move and do they move better after doing that technique. And if they are, then we're on the right track. Otherwise, let's not get too caught up in fascia theory because we can't truly prove it on the playing field.
I've been to numerous facilities around the country, and I feel like I've seen a lot of different types of foam rollers, the PVC pipe again, to the different shapes. And I want to talk specifically about your background with RumbleRoller specifically, and they almost have like spikes built into it. I mean, why do the different shapes of the rolling tools even exist? I mean, can you walk me through the different ideas and how each tool can be right for the right job?
Sure, absolutely. And that's something that a lot of people are confused by. You know, many people will think, okay, it's got spikes on it's better, or no, it's got spikes on it's too aggressive, it's dangerous. And the truth is, if you're an 85-year-old, massively deconditioned individual that's never, ever exercised your whole life, and you start rolling around on the extra firm rumble roller, you're probably going to get bruising. You may even do more tissue trauma than it's beneficial for you. So you might be better off not even using the rumble roller. So one of the things that I really like about the company is that the inventor of RumbleRoller and the president of the company, they're two different people. Those gentlemen and I met about 4 years ago after they saw some videos of mine online. They liked the way that I present the concepts that I teach. I was in this one video presenting how to scale the intensity of the RumbleRoller by using it against the wall instead of using it on the floor. And they really appreciated the fact that I was trying to teach people this level of intensity that you might feel. If you're on the floor with your body weight laying on it, it might be too much to even be beneficial. And so they appreciated my perspective on that. One of the things that I said to them after our meeting when they asked me to come on board with showing people how to use their products and including their products or including my education to teach their products, I said to them, I don't want to be restricted to just RumbleRoller products. If someone wants to use a tennis ball, I want to be able to show them without RumbleRoller getting on my back about showing the tennis ball, or the trigger point products, or any other products on the market. We use an elastic strap that's made of a blend of silicone-like material to do compression strap work because of the benefits that will provide for doing self-massage later. So there's different tools we use for different functions, and RumbleRoller, the inventor and the president of the company, are both very much on board with me teaching the idea of self-myofascial release rather than just trying to sell their products for them. Now, with that in mind, I went to RumbleRoller as my preferred roller of choice more than 4 years ago, shortly after they came on the market, specifically because I've been teaching self-myofascial release at that point for more than 4 years in a classroom setting, and for more than a decade to my clients privately. And the techniques, teaching them how to work on their calves or how to work on their thighs or anywhere in the body, it got kind of technical and got kind of forceful trying to use a smooth roller, especially for my stronger clients. The RumbleRoller, you don't have to use force. You can actually just lay there and breathe. Do nothing. Just lay there. And you'll feel, like you mentioned, those spikes that are on there, you'll feel those bumps start to dig in. And that makes the process of teaching self-myofascial release so much simpler. It's such a faster process. The aha moment comes on so much quicker. And by doing that, I can spend more time showing the client or showing the coach how to best utilize these techniques to get a good change on the muscles that are affecting that movement rather than trying to just teach them the technique. In this case, I have a tool that you just lay on, and within seconds, you start to understand what I'm talking about. Now, with that in mind, you said there's all these different kinds of products on the market. I would agree with you that it's kind of confusing, and what makes it even more confusing is that if you don't try these products while you're investigating them, you really have no idea whether or not it's going to work better for you. I would encourage your listeners to physically try the products, physically experiment with the techniques to find out which ones provide them the best relief. It is not so simple as, I think RumbleRoller is the best product on the market, therefore you should go out and buy it. I would strongly disagree with that statement from anyone. I think you, yourself, Rob, should investigate what works best for you, and if it's a tennis ball, go with the tennis ball. If it's a racquetball or a lacrosse ball instead of the beastie ball from RumbleRoller, use what works. What I will tell you is this. I've seen over the last 10-plus years I've been doing these techniques with my clients that over time, if you're doing self-myofascial release properly and you're getting a proper massage as needed, maybe twice a month, like you mentioned for some of your athletes, you're going to notice the tissue gets more resilient, it gets more supple, and you can handle more pressure, more deep tissue massage work, and it won't hurt. It's not painful. So you don't have to chase the pain and make it hurt as excruciatingly much as possible. What's more important is you chase tension in the muscles. So if the calves are tight, you want to get rid of that tension. If the quads are tight, you want to get rid of that tension. And over time, maybe it's a 10% improvement per day, maybe it's a 5% improvement, but over time you should see a little bit of improvement every day you do it. You should see a decreasing amount of pain every time you do it. That's why in our program we strongly recommend you rotate through the techniques. So you do your quads maybe today, tomorrow you do your adductors, the next day you do your lats, and then rotate back through that system of doing quads, adductors, lats every other day, rotating through, changing it. By doing that, you're not going to hit your quads every single day and deep tissue massage the same tissues every day and cause it to be more sensitive, more painful. So the RumbleRollers can be great. They're actually a really good addition to your toolbox, but I would strongly recommend that people try the products before they buy them to make sure they're not getting something too aggressive for themselves at this moment in time.
If you're looking at program design, I'm sure we could ask 10 people and get 10 different answers. Are you doing foam rolling or that self-myofascial release when people enter the gym or come right in at the beginning of practice? Are you doing it during? Is there a benefit to do it actually during or between exercises, or going from upper to lower, or going from squats to hamstrings, or those types of things? Or is there a benefit to doing it just after? I mean, tell me, is there a better time to use the RumbleRoller and the SMR techniques or tools in our program?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of the coaches I've talked to around the nation, in the United States especially, that think of foam rolling as only applicable in the gym, as like for the warm up or the cool down, and they don't recommend the foam rolling, or they don't even talk about their clients doing it away from the gym. What I would suggest is the most important time to do foam rolling is right before you go to bed. Honestly, right before you go to sleep, if you open up your quads or your lower back or your neck, you're going to get better recovery in those tissues while you sleep. You're going to wake up with your neck less stiff or your back less stiff. The idea that you're going to go to the gym or go to the playing field, you're going to do your practice, you're going to do your warm-up and cool-down drills and so on, and then you leave, and for the next 22, 23 hours, whatever it is, before you go back again, you do nothing to take care of your body except for just live your life. That, to me, is kind of crazy. So for years, we've taught people that SMR should be thought of as homework more so than gym work. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't do it in the gym. Matter of fact, we have lots of rollers and balls we use with our clients before and after the workouts. Very rarely do we do it mixed into the workout, but if we're doing a slow strength training session, let's say we're doing squats with weight, front squats, back squats, or doing some Oli lifting, and as the athlete does a front squat, in the bottom of the squat or some portion of that range of motion, they notice that they just don't feel like they have smooth tracking of their hip or their knee or something else. We might have them do a mild rollout for a couple minutes, but nothing too aggressive during the workout. For years in our manual, we've had the recommendation that before the workout, you'd want to do foam rolling of any sort with a RumbleRoller or anything else, typically 10 to 20 minutes before you do your dynamic mobility, active warm-up strategies. And then after the workout, 10, 20 minutes later, once your heart rate's come down, once your tissues are not quite so tight and ready to go for the actual event, then you start doing some, rolling out afterwards. But if you go really aggressive right before a workout, let's say in your calves, you do a very aggressive deep tissue massage in the calves, the back of your lower leg, and you open up tissues that haven't been really opened up for quite some time, you increase the risk of injury from doing sprints or jumps or anything like that. So doing deep tissue, really aggressive massage work right before a challenging training session is not recommended. It's not a good idea. However, when you go home and the tissues have cooled down a bit before you go to bed, if you were to do a deeper tissue massage work for, let's say, 20, 30 minutes, spending a couple minutes in one area, a couple minutes in another area, you do that before you go to bed, it's extremely likely that's like doing a deep tissue massage session with your therapist, but not quite the same as what they would do to you, but close. So the next morning when you wake up, your Achilles or your shin splints or whatever issue is bothering you, that's just a little bit better after you wake up the next day. So I would strongly encourage your listeners to think of SMR as homework that can be done in the gym before and after a workout, but also really strongly recommended to do at home. Take a few minutes, 5, 10, 20 minutes before you go to bed. Matter of fact, if you can do it before you start the day, like right after you get out of bed and right before you go to bed at the end of the day, that is our ideal recommendation for people before and after they start their day.
Being an American and getting an opportunity to see many other countries, I can say that Americans will, when they're told to take one aspirin, they are generally looking at taking the entire bottle because more is always better.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're the only country that does that. And maybe that's just an abrupt generalization. But if you're talking foam rolling or this myofascial release and the different stiffnesses of the tools that we're using, I feel like it's almost like a toughness thing that someone's going to go from the EVA foam, like we talked about, the white stuff that almost collapses in about a month, ballpark of heavy use. And then you talk about going into the softer trigger point therapy ones, and then the blue roller, RumbleRoller, and then into black, and then almost into like a baseball bat. And then we're looking for like a steel roll, and then we're adding weight to that. And it's almost like how much can you take as far as the pressure and the pain and that type of thing. I mean, is there really a time where we should be using a harder RumbleRoller versus one of the stiffer ones? I mean, if someone's familiar with the product line, you're talking either the blue one, which is a little bit softer, and the black one, which is firmer. And then also from the Beastie Balls, the white one's going to be softer, and the green one's going to be more firm. I mean, can you walk me through a little bit of the time frame when we should be using those two tools?
Absolutely. Like you said, the more is better mindset is most prevalent here in the United States. We tend to have that attitude of like, go big or go home. And in a lot of ways, that's good because we succeed in these dramatic fashions compared to some other cultures, especially when it comes to athletics. Just look at the Olympics and how many medals and so on. So we tend to put a high emphasis on that performance, upper end echelon. We can do more. But when it comes to this therapy stuff, more is not always better. And I've had countless instances where I'm working at an athletic event of some sort. In many cases, a CrossFit style event where they're doing a competition or a running event, whether it's a 5K or a marathon. And I have someone come into the booth where we're doing an expo, and the person is treating the roller as if it's a workout. They're zipping along back and forth really fast and this and that, or they're telling me, hey, do you have any of these RumbleRollers made out of wood or steel? At the Mr. Olympia, we've had these big burly bodybuilder guys that are pushing 300 pounds, and their arms are 22 inches around or whatever, and these huge, strong men, and literally within 5 minutes, I'll have them on the ground with the blue, softer roller, and they're getting a faster release by not trying so hard rather than doing the techniques they used to do. And it really comes back to this idea of activation of the muscles. I like to use the analogy, overseas last year I went to Asia 7 times, and along the way the communications breakdown because of translation was a little bit difficult sometimes, especially about anatomy, neurology, and so on. So some of the explanations that I give were simplified or put into different analogies to make it a little bit easier to digest. And one of the analogies is as simple as this. If you try to tickle yourself under your armpit, you can't. You can't tickle yourself. But so if someone else takes their fingers and rubs them under your arm, it's likely you'll get some kind of response. You'll at least feel it, if not jump, because you're so ticklish. And the point that I want to make here is that neurologically, when you tickle yourself, there is an activation of the tissues that you are pressing on, that activation is not the same when someone else touches you. And it seems like a simple point that a lot of people overlook. When someone massages you, it's different than when you massage yourself. And so if you're trying to use more force, let's say that, Rob, you're trying to massage my back, my neck, my legs, you can lean onto my body with your weight and actually put more weight on that area of my body than I could by trying to push on it myself with my own body. Because I can only be as heavy as I am. You can take the amount of force of your body weight and put it into literally a 2-inch area of my body. So I've got, let's say, a couple hundred pounds of force on that one spot. But I can't put the 205 pounds that I weigh onto one spot on my body because my body, my entire body weighs that much. So I can't put all that weight into one spot. That's just not possible. Not without activating the tissues to a very large degree. Let's say, for example, I'm standing on one foot on the rumble roller, and I'm putting all my weight onto the arch of my right foot. I can get my 200 pounds into that one spot, but I have to activate the arch to balance my body, to stabilize my weight on the roller. That's not the best way to try and get into those tissues. So in many cases, the more is better mindset winds up working against the release that we're looking for. And you have people that say, well, foam rolling doesn't work for this reason, or foam rolling is only superficial for this reason, and they think they need a harder roller. And I would agree that they need a more firm object to get through the active layers, but the problem is as soon as we go with, like, let's say a metal bar, like you mentioned, taking a barbell and stroking the tissues with a metal barbell, the risk to benefit ratio gets all out of whack at that point. The blue rumble roller and the black rumble roller rollers are actually softer than the tendinous tissue attachment to the bone or the bone itself. They're firmer than the muscle tissue, but softer than the bones or the tendons or the ligament. The green BC ball from rumble roller is firm enough on some people to actually be a little damaging to the joint tissues if they push too hard. And that's only if they start with that one. They've never done massage before, and the tissues aren't ready for it. So the white BC ball is much softer than the tendinous attachments of the bones, so I'm not worried about people causing any damage with that tool. I strongly encourage people to start with the blue roller, start with the white ball, experiment with them, play around with them, learn how the body responds to that. Bumps on those tools are spaced far enough apart to allow the muscle spindle sections of the muscle tissue to sag between the 2 points. There are other balls or rollers on the market that have points that are closer together, and the muscle spindle sections for the sarcomere the sarcomeres that are activated by them are typically 1 to 2 centimeters long. And so when you have bumps that are closer together than the rumble roller BC ball or the roller itself, you wind up stimulating the muscle spindles more so than releasing tension by allowing that muscle spindle to relax. So laying there without moving, it tends to be a better release practice. Doing movements on there tends to be a better activation practice. What we suggest is do both. Move around on it, roll around on it, and then sit still and lay there for a moment and see what kind of releases you get from both. If you're getting a release from moving around and rolling around, guess what? That's called a warm-up. That's like you going out and doing some jogging movements and some kicks and some swings of your arms. You're warming up the tissues. You're getting better movement because of that. Great. As long as it works, we're happy. When you lay there for a moment and you let those bumps dig in, you can get an address of the deeper tissues that you can't get to when you're moving around because there's too much activation of the surface layers. So using the rumble rollers, using the firmer tools is only recommended after the softer tools get too easy or too comfortable. We've had clients come into our gym and they start with the blue roller. They're screaming bloody murder the first time they get on it. And then we tell them to scale it. Instead of being on the floor, use a roller against the wall. So they use the blue roller against the wall for maybe a week or two. Then they start laying on the floor for a couple weeks. And then within 2 or 3 months, they're using the black roller. And within 6 months, they're using the black roller, and they cannot believe it doesn't hurt at all. The point is, if it hurts, you need to use a different tool. If it's a little uncomfortable, but it's what my wife calls a hurts feel good, it's a little uncomfortable, but it feels like the right thing to do, keep doing it as long as your movements are improving.
Well, Jeff, man, I really appreciate the opportunity here to talk with you. I know I've taken a whole bunch of notes, and I'm sure we're going to have several conversations here going down the road. Again, it's awesome to be able to expand my network here and talk to someone who does this for a living, and there's a passion for it. And, again, just having better people that know what they're doing or being able to reach out to people to find out not necessarily answers, but just responses that lead to better questions, I think is very important for our field to have that resource. And so I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, my man. If anybody here that's listening to the show, they wanted to reach out to you to find out more information about what you have going on or expand their own network and just connect with you, I mean, how could they go about reaching out to you, my man?
All right, yeah. So we have a couple different places they can find us. On Facebook, we have the page SMR, which stands for Self Myofascial Release. We have that as a free forum for coaches and athletes alike to kind of chime in and ask questions, make comments, get some feedback, or we can provide them with links to our website or other articles that might help them understand better how to take care of themselves. Then we also have our website. We have a bunch of websites, but the first one to go to would be SMR Tips, TIPS. That's smrtips.com. That has an educational resource of, we have our 70 different SMR techniques. We have our almost 90 different stretches that we recommend, but we do recommend other stretches outside of the only ones we provide. So we want people to move in all the different ways they can. And then we have different ways of guiding them through the process of knowing which SMR technique we use and when is this one appropriate or that one appropriate. Why would you do this SMR technique for this area, and so on. So smrtips.com, great online resource that we provide. We also don't believe that we're the only ones that you should look at. Honestly, go out there, do some research, learn about the body, learn about what your sport entails, what's the likely areas that you're going to need some extra therapy, like if you're a baseball player or a football player. What are the areas you're going to need to address more often? Because not every athlete has the same problems, and we want people to be more informed about their specific needs so they can be a better patient when they finally do get real therapy.
Again, Jeff, man, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you here, my man. Hopefully this is a launch pad for us to do many things down the road, and I'm looking forward to staying connected, my man. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and again, I'm looking forward to just keeping in touch, buddy.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate the time, and thanks for letting me be here.